each loop will define a stages or a phase of a management of a program or a product in the spiral model. Without any process or without any specification, they are simply preparing that. Even the customer don't know what they are seeking for. Even the developer don't know what they are developing for. With the help of this Big Bang model, at last we can expect the software as a resultant. But whatever the software or a project or a product which is developed with the help of this Big Bang model may be or may not be as per the requirements of a customer. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. Welcome back to the session 3 of Unit 1, and we are in the B.C.A 6th semester subject called Software Engineering. Today we are going to have a discussion regarding life cycle models. So I am Rohini T.S., Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So before getting into have the discussion regarding this life cycle models, we'll just have a quick recap of my previous session. So in the previous session of this unit, we have discussed regarding the software engineering paradigm. That means that strategies which will going to be used in order to develop a system development life cycle, or in order to have a SDLC, it will going to follow some of the methodologies, tools and techniques that we are going to call that as a paradigms. And also we have a life cycle models. As I told earlier, each model will going to have its own methodology of solving a problem, and under that we have discussed regarding waterfall model. So here we have a classical waterfall model as well as iterative waterfall model, and also have discussed regarding this incremental model. Then we have discussed regarding what is evolutionary model or what is iterative model. So in our today's session, we're going to discuss regarding the spiral model, very important topic, that is spiral model, and also we'll see what this prototyping model is all about along with a Big Bang model. So now we'll see about this spiral model. So before the spiral model, you have to understand and you need to recall the previous content. So there we have discussed regarding a waterfall model and also iterative or incremental or evolutionary model, right? So when it comes to the evolutionary or incremental model, there was one disadvantage, that is it was unable to maintain the risk, or risk handling is not so efficient in the previous models. So in order to overcome that disadvantage or that drawback, we have a model called spiral model. So this spiral model is a very effective and efficient model. This will going to handle the risk in a efficient manner, so that if the risk is handled in a efficient manner, so you can expect a very good or very well defined or designed model which will going to solve the given problem of a customer. So that in this spiral model, it is considered as a most important model in the SDLC or a software development life cycle. This will going to support mainly for the risk handling. Risk handling management and support will be given by this spiral model. So if it is spiral, you just need to imagine it will be like what? It is like a loop. Okay, and each loop of a spiral is called a phase of the software development process. So whatever the loop we have here, and each loop will be considered as a phase. Already we know we have analysis, after that it has to be design, then coding, implementation, all those phases already we know about the SDLC. So when it comes to the spiral model, each phase will be defined as a spiral or a loop in the spiral model, and also however the number of loops or a phases whatever we have, that will going to be different from one project to another project. That is based on the developer, or it will be based on the risk how that project or product will going to takes place. And also that radius of the spiral at any point represents the expenses. So if the spiral or loop keep on growing, then it will be more expensive. That means we are adding more features to that content, and each loop or each spiral will going to say us it's regarding one phase. For example, if I am having 5 features in the particular product or a project, so first I am going to implement that in a one phase. So if I wanted to add 5 more content, then I will just have one more looping. So that means if the radius of that looping is getting higher and higher, then it will also become high or costlier of the project, and also the angular dimension which represents the progress which is made so far in the current phase. So its angular dimension, how broad it is, so that will going to define its progress of a project in each current phase of a spiral model. So here you can see the representation of this spiral model. It will going to have a 4 quadrant. So quadrant 1, quadrant 2 and quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So in the each quadrant it will going to perform some of the operation, and already we know that it will be in the spiral form, right? So each loop will define a stages or a phase of a management of a program or a product in this spiral model. So here you can see that risk management which comes in the second quadrant. So in order to manage that risk, or in order to maintain the uncertainty in the project, they are going to produce, or they will prepare this prototypes. So I will discuss about this prototypes in the coming slides. As of now, prototype is nothing but it's just a replica of a actual program. We are not defining or we are not developing a actual product. Instead of that, we are just having a replica. That means it's a dummy model. So whatever the changes that I am going to make to this prototype will not affect my exact or the actual product what we are preparing for. So that after that, in order to maintain the risk, they will have this prototype, and design part will going to take place. Here they will collect the requirements in the first quadrant, and that requirements will be analyzed in a very well manner. Then it will reach to here. Then they will check about the types of risk, whatever we can expect in the solution. After that, what are the methodologies or how prototype can help in order to manage this risk, that will take place in the second quadrant. And in the third quadrant, they will design and code or implementation will going to be takes place, and they will do the unit testing. Each component whatever has been developed in the spiral model will going to be integrated together, that will be tested. Then implementation, that means deployment of that product will be given to the customer, and customer will going to have that released product. Then that will go for the review. So if the customer is happy with the product, whatever is developed from the spiral model will be reviewed by the customer, and maintenance will going to take place. If the customer wanted to have some more features again, so then again the spiral will going to be takes place. So if the number of loop increases, that means number of phases will going to be increases. At that time, cost is also going to be high. It will be expensive, and it also reduces the uncertainty. It also reduces the risk. Then if the risk is managed in a very well manner, this will going to be a boom of a software or a product what we are developing with the help of this spiral model. So here you can see that totally we have a 4 quadrant. In the first quadrant, they will specify the objectives determination and identify the alternative solution. So they will specify in the first quadrant what are the objectives of this problem, and also they will check about the alternative solution. Yes, is this the problem? Okay, we have 5 many solution for a given problem. Then they will check for which problem will going to be, or which solution will going to be very well cooperative with a given problem. So they will think about the alternative solution in the terms of which cost is low and which budget will be within the given money, and along with that they will think about the time also. So if all the criteria got satisfied, then they will select one solution among the other solution. After that, they will identify and resolve the risk. So now I have chosen any one of the solution among number of solution. So under that solution, I have to check what are the risks that I can expect from this solution. So if I found some of the risk, then how to resolve it. That means how can I remove that error, or how can I resolve that error. So it must be error free, or it must be risk free. So then only it will be proceed for the development of a next version of a product. So when in the third quadrant they are starting, or they will develop a next version. That means if I get to know what are the requirements I require and which is the best solution among the solutions whatever we have, after that it will going to be design, implementation, coding, all those will going to be takes place. So then it is ready for the release. So then when it released product or a project will going to be reviewed by the customer, and they will think about the next phase. That means if I wanted to add some more content, or if I wanted to delete the previous content which is not so okay with the customer, all those will going to be takes place in the loop wise manner. If the number of loop increases, that cost is also going to be increases, but risk will going to be reduced, and we can expect more features when this loop is getting higher and higher. So here you can see the stages whatever we have in the spiral model. First stage is objectives determination and identify the alternative solution. As I told already, so here all the requirements will going to be gathered from the customers, and the objectives are identifier, like what they are seeking for, what is their problem, like which kind of solution they are seeking for. Everything will going to be identified, and they will elaborate and analyze at start of every phase. So when I start that loop, in each phase I will analyze the problem is what all about, and also they will find the alternative solution which will be given a possible solution. That means which will be more efficient among all the given solution. They will check about that. That is the thing which is going to happen in the first quadrant. So when it comes to the second quadrant, they will identify and resolve the risk. So already I know I have some of the possible solutions. So all the solutions will going to be evaluated based on certain criteria. So after that, they will select the best possible solution among the given number of solutions. So when they found the best solution, after that risk which is associated with that solution will going to be identified, and that risk are resolved using the best possible strategy. This is what we have learnt in the paradigms, right? So I have to select which is the best strategies in order to implement any of the solution to a given problem. So after that, at the end of this quadrant, what is the output that I can expect? That is what? Prototype. After maintaining the risk, or after analyzing what is the risk which is associated with a possible solution, then they will start preparing with a prototype. So that prototype is just a dummy model, so which will going to be implemented and given to the customer, and customer will going to work towards to that. If they feel okay, then they will start developing the actual product or a project. So that in the third quadrant, develop next version of a product. So in this third quadrant, what will going to happen? So they identify the features which is developed and verified through the testing. So in the prototyping, what they will do, they will just prepare a dummy model. So that will going to be given to the customer. Before that, they will design that, they will code or they will implement that. Then all the integration will happen. Then that will given to the testing team. So when it got tested at the end of a third quadrant, so next version of a software will going to be available. So once it is got tested, if there is no loopholes, if there is no drawbacks in the tested team, at that time that will be given to the customer for the purpose of review, and also they will plan for the next phase. That means I wanted to increase its features one by one, so that in the fourth quadrant the customer evaluate so far developed version of a software. So at last quadrant, the developer will give the content or its product or a project to the customer. Customer will start working towards to that, and they will evaluate whether it is as per my requirements or not. If not, they will give it back to the developer to have or to create some more features as per their requirements. If they are okay, they will start working towards to that. And at the end of this, planning for the next phase is going to be started. For example, if you wanted to build a house, at that time you have built only 2 floors, okay? Once it is finished, you may feel that I wanted to build one more floor above that second floor. At that time, what they will do, they will plan for the next phase. So same thing will going to be happen in a spiral model. You can also consider this spiral model as a meta model. Why? Because we have all the kinds of model in the spiral model. So you can see we have a phases. Each phases has to take place one after another. That is what waterfall model. And also I can increment its feature. That is incremental model. And also we are going to have this prototype model. That is what dummy model. So all those together will going to constitute in this spiral model. So you can see here how risk will going to be handled in a spiral model. So already we know that we have a risk in a solution. Among the risk of a particular solution, we have to select the best strategies in order to find a solution of a given problem of a customer. So that maintaining of that risk will going to be very important role, which needs to be specified and which needs to be rectified as soon as possible in the development life cycle. So that if the risk, we can consider that as an adverse situation that might affect the successful completion of a software project. If you are unable to check or if you are unable to find out what is the risk which is associated with the product or a project, if we didn't find that, then it will be considered as a difficult situation which will going to affect the completion of a software in a successful manner. So that most important feature of a spiral model is it is able to handle the unknown risk after the project has started. So I don't know what are the risks which may arise during the project development or during the development of a product. So at the time when we are using this spiral model, it will be easy in order to understand and in order to get to know regarding the unknown risk. So if we get to know what is the risk is all about, then it will be easy for the handling. If I let the risk to be associated with a product or a project, so later on it will going to be a big difficulty. So that risk will going to be result will be easier, which will done in the developing of a prototype. How this risk will going to be managed, that is with a prototype. As already told you, it is just a dummy model. They are not preparing the actual model. So if something goes wrong with a developing product, then they won't bother. Why? Because it's a prototype. It's not the actual one. It is a dummy product or the replica of the exact product what they wanted to prepare in future. So this spiral model supports the coping up with the risk by providing the scope to build a prototype at every phase of a software development. So we can have a prototype in all the phases or all the stages of developing a software. I can have a analysis and design team as a prototype. I can have a prototyping with respect to the coding. In all the quadrant, we can have a prototyping. In all the phases, we can have a prototyping. So no need to worry about the money and time. Why? Because whatever we have spent on a prototype, if something goes wrong, that will not going to affect the actual model what they are preparing. So if it is okay, then they will start with the working or building of a actual product. So that the prototyping model also supports the risk handling. That is the main important thing. But the risk must be identified completely before the start of the development work of the project. When we have to find the risk, that too before the development of a product or a project. So if they start working towards the project or if they start working the development of a project, at that time analysis of that risk and finding of that risk could be difficult. So we have to identify the risk even before the development of a project. And also the spiral model is also called as meta model. Very important point. So when you are writing a spiral model content, at the time you have to mention risk handling along with a meta model. Already I told you regarding this meta model. Meta in the sense data about another data. We can consider this spiral model as a meta model. Why? Because it will going to have a subsumes of all other types of models or SDLC models whatever we have discussed and what we'll be discussing in my coming session. So it will going to have a characteristics of all other type of SDLC model. That's why it will be considered as what? Meta model. Spiral model is also considered as meta model because it will going to subsumes all the SDLC models whatever we have in the software engineering. Right? So we'll see the next content, that too with respect to the advantages of spiral model. So when it comes to the advantages of spiral modeling, already we know about the risk handling. What are the uncertain risk or unknown risk which is going to be arised before the development of a software or before the development of a project, which can be handled in a very well manner with the help of this spiral model. So second advantage is all about good for large project. Why? Because it is somehow expensive. If it is only using for the small project, that is not so effective. But if you are using it for the large project or a complex project, risk will going to be analyzed and rectified in a very well manner. So it will be easy, and to develop a complex or a large project, this methodology or a model will be considered as a good one. And flexibility in requirements. It will going to have number of loops, right? If I wanted to add some more features, then it is possible in the spiral model. And also customer satisfaction. Why? Because there will be a interaction between the development team with the customer. So if the customer is saying, if I wanted to add some more features to the existing content, then the developer will be okay. So there will be a conversation or a contact between the customer as well as the development team, and customer can see what the project or a product which is developing for them, right? So the customer satisfaction will be considered as a high privilege in the spiral model. And also customer can see that how they are preparing, what they are preparing, whether they are satisfying the requirements of mine or not. So if not, what are the features I wanted to add? Everything will going to be done in the spiral model. So that customer satisfaction is also high in the spiral model. So then if you have advantages, then there could be a chances of having the disadvantages too, right? So now you can see the disadvantages of this spiral model. Mainly it is complex. Why I can consider this spiral model as a complex one? Because if you are unable to find the risk, or if you are not experienced expert, then it will be a difficult task. So if you don't know how to manage the risk, how to identify the risk, so can I consider this as a risk or not? If you don't know all those things, then it will be a complex task. So it required experienced expert in order to work with this spiral model, mainly to handle the risk, which will be considered as a complex task. So if the number of loop or number of phases increases, then it also be expensive. So with respect to the cost, it will be higher, and also too much dependability on the risk analysis. So if I don't know what risk is all about, then the resultant will be uncertain. So you have to be ready to accept the project or a product however it will be. So it will always depends on the risk analysis. So if they fail to analyze the risk in a proper manner, then the product or a project whatever they have developed will be the scrapped one. So that it will depends on the risk, and also difficulty in time of management, why? Because if the customer is seeking for the solution in a minimum time, at that time they have to analyze the risk and they have to resolve it. So everything, the time management for the development of a software with the help of this spiral model needs to be very high, so that somehow it is difficult to manage the time. So these are the disadvantages what you can expect in the spiral model. I hope you all understood regarding spiral model. You just need to write its content, like why spiral model is considered as a meta model, how risk will be analyzed. After that, write the diagram or schematic representation of a spiral model and go with the advantages and disadvantages. So for every model you have to write like this. We'll see the next model, that is with respect to the prototyping model. So already we know about the risk management or a risk analysis, why it needs to be resolved. Everything we already know in the spiral model. So in this prototyping model, mainly for the purpose of handling a risk analysis or to have an unknown or a uncertain risk, this prototyping model will going to helpful. Already we have discussed regarding a prototype. It's just like a dummy model. It's a replication of a product or a system that has to be engineered. So it is not yet developed. It's just a replica of a actual one. So actual one is different than the replica. So right, in the replica, whatever the changes that I am doing will not going to affect on my actual project or a product. So that is what the reason here, process of developing a working replication of a product or a system which will take place in the prototyping. And also this prototyping will going to offer a small scale facsimile of the end product, and it is used for obtaining the customer feedback. This is just like replication. It's a replication or photocopy of the actual one. So they are specifying or they are developing the small scale replication of an actual project. Then they will give it to the customer for their feedback. Then they will take the review from the customer whether it is working properly or not. If the customer say okay, then they will start working towards the actual one. If the customer say I'm not okay with this content or a developed project or a product, then again they will do the reworking with respect to the prototyping model all about. So that this model is used when the customer do not know the exact project requirements beforehand. Like it's your final year project. Somehow you don't know what you are supposed to do. At the time, what do you say to the developer? You just do whatever you want. I just wanted to have a project. I don't know what project I wanted to do. If you don't have enough requirement or if you don't have a specification, at the time, this prototyping model will be helpful. So when the user doesn't know or when they don't know the exact project requirements, so whatever may be the resultant, they must be okay. So if I don't know what is the requirement, what I am seeking for, what my project is all about, at the time this kind of prototyping model will be helpful. So that in this model, prototype of end product is the first developed So they are just creating or developing a end product as a replica that will be given to the customer. Before that, they have to test it. After that, refine as the customer feedback. So that customer interaction between the developer will be very high. Customer feedback will be taken. After that, the developer will going to develop the actual one only when customer says okay for the feedback. So that it will going to be repeatedly done until the acceptable prototype is achieved. So when the customer say I'm okay with this replicated or I'm okay with this prototype model, then only they will start working or they will start forming the actual product. So this mainly based on the review of a customer or interaction or the suggestions whatever the customer will going to do. And also we are going to have 4 kinds of different prototype models. In that we have a rapid throwaway prototyping. That means if for example if I have 5 features, so they will just prepare first feature as one model or a replica, then they will prepare second one, and one by one they will do, right? So this one will be given to the customer for the feedback. If the customer say okay, then they will start working to this first feature, and in the same way all the feature will going to be prototyped or all the features will going to be just replicated as the actual one. So that is rapid throwaway. And you also remember one thing, whatever the prototype model which is given for the customer feedback may not be the part of a acceptance model. For example, if I am preparing this first feature, if the customer says no, I don't want it, then it won't be the part of the acceptance testing. That means it won't be the part of actual development of a project. That is what rapid throwaway prototyping. If they don't want, they will just throw this prototype or a model what they have prepared. And also we have a evolutionary prototyping. They will develop and the customer feedback will be takes place based on their customer review or a feedback. This will going to be evaluated for the next phase. And also we have a incremental prototyping. So this is also somehow related to this evolutionary. So phase by phase, if they wanted to have some more content at that time, this incremental model or a prototyping is also helpful. And we have a extreme prototyping. This is mainly for the web designment. So for that reason, for the web development process, we are going to have this extreme prototyping model. So these are the types what we have in the prototyping model. So here you can see the diagrammatic representation of this prototyping model. What is the first phase? Already we know that requirement needs to be analyzed, then they will think about whether it is feasible to implement even theoretically, technologically or technically. If it is okay, if the feasibility study says yes, then they will design the software. So once the software is designed, that will be converted as a prototyping. That means it is just a dummy model. So if it is developed or prototyping has been done, that will be given for the customer for the evaluation purpose. So if the customer evaluated all the prototyping or a replica of the actual one, so after that if they feel that I wanted to change some content based on the customer review, they will do the updation. So then again they will design, then again it will be considered as another phase of a prototyping. Again it will reach to the customer for the feedback. If they say okay, then it will be gone for the coding. So implementation will be done, then software testing will be done. If the testing is done, then that will reach to the customer and further they have to do the maintenance, right? This is how this prototyping model will going to work. So here you can see some of the advantages. So what is the main advantage here? Already a user know what the project they are looking for and what they are preparing for. So that customer get to see the partial product early in the life cycle model. So because they are just giving you the virtual model. For example, you can take the apartments. So before building the apartments, they will just going to put a banner, right? How it will going to look like once it is built. And also you can have a 3D view of an apartment. So you can have the VR, that is virtual reality, which is in the 3D form. So you can have a 360 degree of view of a apartment which they wanted to build. So with the help of that walkthrough or with the help of all those 3D images, there will be a chances of getting know what is the partial. They will get to know about the partial product even if it is not yet started developing. So that will going to ensure a greater level of customer satisfaction and comfort. Before building the building or any of the house, they will just give you the blueprint, like how it will going to be look like once it is built. So at the time only if the customer is satisfied with a design or a prototyping, then it will be easy for the developer. And also new requirements can be easily added, and also missing functionality can be easily figured out in the next phase. Or if I wanted to have it some more after certain time, then I can have this missing functionality, and it can be reviewed and can be easily figured out, and errors can be detected much easier. So it will going to save a lot of effort, time, as well as the cost. So if we get to know what error is all about, what is the risk, because in order to maintain a risk only we are having this prototyping model, so that development time will be less in the prototyping model, and also flexibility will be there in the design. As per the requirement of a customer, they can have a bi-directional design. So that flexibility in the design part we can expect in the prototyping model. Then what are the disadvantages we have? It is costlier anyway. If you are having interaction with a customer, and if you are preparing, if they don't okay, then again you have to create another one. So it will be costlier, and there will be too much variation in the requirements. If a customer is not so okay, they have to come up with a new requirement. So it will be too much of requirement and poor documentation. As per the changing requirements, they have to do the documentation frequently. So it will be considered as a poor documentation, and also it is difficult for the developer to accommodate all the changes which is come up with the customer. So if the customer is coming with the 5 features today, and they will come another 5 feature, and if they says that I don't want the features which I have given in the yesterday's, so at that time the customer or a developer, however the effort they have put in order to develop that prototype, everything will be waste. So that is why it will be difficult and risky, and there is uncertainty in determining the number of iteration, how many number of looping I wanted to have, how many number of specification I wanted to make a changes. All those will be uncertain here. And also after seeing an early prototyping, customer may lose their interest. So if we have a virtual view, if you know already how this building will be seen after once it is built, at that time you are just going to lose the interest. It will not be the surprising package for you. So that is also one of the disadvantage, and somehow developers will be in the hurry if the customer is coming up with new features, or if they are changing frequently, somehow developers will also going to be frustrated one. So these are the disadvantages which we have in the prototyping model. We'll see the next one, that is regarding Big Bang model. So Big Bang in the sense, if you don't know what to do, even if the customer don't know what I'm seeking for, even if the developer don't know which methodology to use. That is what this Big Bang model is all about. So that it's just like a boom. If you are getting a resultant as per your expectation, then you will be in the safer side. But if you don't know what you are seeking for, even if you don't have any of the plans to prepare what kind of project or a product, then this Big Bang model is for you, right? So I will see the Big Bang model is a SDLC model where we do not follow any specific process. Without any process or without any specification, they are simply preparing that. Even the customer don't know what they are seeking for. Even the developer don't know what they are developing for. So that is what Big Bang. Somehow it is risky. It's mainly helpful only when you wanted to have a college project, or when you wanted to do it for the internship purpose. So for that reason, this Big Bang model will be okay. It can't be used for the complex one or for the larger project. So that development just starts with the required money and effort. Only if I have a minimal planning with respect to development of any project, then they will just think about what is the cost we require in order to develop this and how much effort we are supposed to put. So that is what developers will going to think in the initial stage, will be considered as an input. They just think about how much time it requires, what are the efforts we are supposed to put, and what is the number of money or what is the cost we have to put in order to develop that. And also the output is the software developed, which may or may not be as per the customer requirement. It is just like a expectation versus reality. So you may expecting something, but you may get something as a reality. That is what main thing is. What the development team just, they will look about the effort and a money. Are you able to give this much of money for development of this project? If you say okay, then they will start working towards that. Even the customer is don't know what I'm looking for, and even developer is don't know which methodology or a strategy needs to be used for the development of that product. So for example, in this Big Bang model, which will not going to follow a process or a procedure, and it is a very little planning is required. So in order to develop any of a product or a project with the help of this Big Bang model, we just require only minimal or little amount of planning. So this is what I wanted to do. I don't know what to do, how to do, when to do, within what time I have to complete. I don't know anything, but I just wanted to do this project or a product. So that is what Big Bang model is all about. Even the customer is not sure about what exactly he wants, and also these requirements are implemented on the fly without much analysis. They won't analyze much. They will start working or they start developing the product. So you can see that it's just a Big Bang. So what are the input that I can give? I have to take time as well as the effort and resources whatever we require. With the help of this Big Bang model, at last we can expect the software as a resultant. But whatever the software or a project or a product which is developed with the help of this Big Bang model may be or may not be as per the requirements of a customer. This is regarding Big Bang model, and also you can see some of the advantages. It's very simple model. Why? Because if you don't know anything, then there will be no much worries. So that it is a very simple model. Even customer don't know what they're seeking for, even developer don't know what they are developing of. So that is why it is very easy. So little or no planning is required and easy to manage, because once we don't know what we are doing, so it will be easy for the management. If I am checking for something or if I am seeking for the specific project or a product, then I will think about the management. But if I don't know what I am searching for or what I am looking for as a project, so it will be easy to manage. Only few resources are required and it will give the flexibility to the developer. Why? Because whatever the customer says or whatever the thought we have in the developers could be implemented based on the requirement of a customer. And mainly this kind of model will be good for learning aid and also for the newcomers or a student what they wanted to do the project, because we don't know what we are doing. That's why this kind of model will be useful for the students or for the newcomers to have a dummy model. And you can also expect the disadvantages. Already I told you regarding the expectation is different and reality will be different. That is what? Very high risk and uncertainty. I have spent lakh together for the development of a software and I have put a lot of effort. But if I didn't get the expected result, then it will be risk one. So that very high risky and also uncertainty will be very high in this Big Bang model. And it's also not a good model for complex and object oriented project, and also poor mode for long and ongoing project. It's just like a static one. If you wanted to build without any knowledge or a planning, then it will be okay. So if you wanted to have it for a long process or evolutionary model, incremental processor or a features you wanted to have, then this is not your selection about the Big Bang model, and also can turn out to be a very expensive if the requirements are misunderstood. So if the development team misunderstood the requirements whatever which is given by the customer, and if they start working towards that, and if they have built any other model which is not as per the requirements of a customer, then there will be very high, and even customer needs to be ready to bear all those expenses. So these are the disadvantages what you can expect in the Big Bang model. I hope you all enjoyed and understood my today's class. In my coming session, we'll have discussion regarding some more types of life cycle models. That includes object-oriented model, and also we have a V model, that is verification and validation model, and also we'll see what system engineering is all about and what is computer-based system and how the system design hierarchy will going to be takes place. So this will be the content of my next session. Let me meet you in the next session. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.